All right, so winter's coming, and if you're anything like me, you're probably already thinking about how it's going to affect your e-bike,
Oh, yeah?
especially the battery. I mean, we've all heard those horror stories about range dropping in the cold.
Definitely a concern.
And we got a ton of articles from you guys about this, including this really interesting one from Ebike 24. So we're diving deep into the science behind why cold weather affects e-bike batteries, and more importantly, how to keep those e-bikes rolling all winter long.
Yeah, you don't want to get stuck out in the cold with a dead battery.
Absolutely not. No one wants that.
Not fun. So, first you got to understand that cold temperatures actually make it harder for the battery to do its job, like at a chemical level.
Okay, so it's not just like a feeling, there's actual science happening here.
Right, it's all about chemistry.
Interesting.
Yeah, there have been studies on electric cars, like the one by that German automobile club, ADAC. They found that at -7 degrees Celsius, the range dropped by an average of 40%.
40%? That's a lot. So like if you normally get, say, 50 miles on a charge.
You're looking at maybe 30.
Wow.
Yeah, and another study, this one by Geotab, saw even bigger drops, like almost 50% when it was -15 Celsius. Now those are cars, not e-bikes, but the principle's the same.
Right. Still, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, it could mean having to call a ride home instead of finishing your ride.
Okay, so that's a little scary. So what exactly is happening inside the battery to cause this?
Well, the cold affects how the lithium ions move within the battery.
Okay.
Imagine trying to move through thick syrup instead of water.
Oh, got it.
That's kind of what's happening to those ions.
They're struggling.
Yeah, it creates resistance and slows down the chemical reactions that make the power.
So the battery's working hard, but it just can't keep up.
Exactly. It's like it's trying its best, but the cold is just too much.
Now, I know e-bikes have that battery management system, the BMS.
Right.
It's supposed to protect the battery,
It does, to a point. It's designed to prevent damage.
but it can't completely overcome the laws of physics.
Oh.
So even with the BMS working, we still need to do our part to protect our batteries in the winter.
Definitely. There are a few things you can do, starting with how you store it.
Okay, so storage is key. Got it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so storage, you were saying. Like, what are some actual tips for keeping our batteries happy in the cold?
Well, it's kind of like us, right? When it's cold, we want to be inside where it's warm.
Makes sense. I'm all about cozying up by the fireplace when the temperature drops.
Exactly. And your battery feels the same way.
Okay.
That Ebike 24 article you sent over, they had some really good advice about this. First off, always charge your battery inside
Inside, okay.
at room temperature.
Makes sense. Don't want to be, like, left out in the cold to recharge.
Right. And once it's fully charged, store it somewhere nice and temperature controlled.
All right.
Ideally between 15 and 25 degrees Celsius.
Okay, so like a nice temperate vacation spot for the battery when it's not in use.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes for whether it's on the bike or off.
Oh, okay. So both ways. What about those rapid temperature changes, like going from really cold to really warm?
Yeah, those are bad news. Avoid them if you can.
Okay.
You get condensation inside the battery if that happens.
Condensation, like actual water.
Yeah, and that can cause damage.
Oh, okay. So no sauna then ice bath routine for our battery.
Right. Steady and comfortable is the way to go.
Got it. So we've talked about storing the battery. What about when we're actually riding in the winter? Any tips for getting the most out of our batteries in the cold?
Definitely. It's a lot like working out, actually. You don't want to jump right into a strenuous workout without warming up first.
Yeah, you got to stretch those muscles.
Exactly. Same goes for your battery. Start your ride in a lower support mode.
Okay.
Give it a chance to warm up gradually.
So like ease into it.
Yep. Then once it's warmed up, you can switch to a higher support mode to maintain that nice operating temperature.
Okay, so it's like, all right, battery, you're warmed up. Now let's show this winter what we're made of.
Aha, exactly.
Love it.
Try to avoid a bunch of short trips with long stops.
Why is that?
Well, each time you restart from cold, it draws a lot of power. Like that initial surge really drains the battery.
Oh.
So a longer continuous ride is actually better in cold weather.
Interesting. So like combine your errands instead of making multiple trips.
Exactly.
Good to know. Now, speaking of keeping things warm, what about those neoprene battery covers I see advertised everywhere?
Oh, yeah, those.
Have you ever tried one of those?
I haven't, but I've definitely seen them around.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious, but also a little skeptical. Do they actually make a difference, or is it just like a marketing gimmick?
I think there's actually some science to it.
Really?
Yeah, the Ebike 24 article talked about it a bit.
Okay.
It's kind of like putting a sweater on your battery.
A sweater?
Yeah, it adds a layer of insulation. help slow down that cooling process.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not gonna like magically double my range, but it could provide some like noticeable benefit.
Right. And it works even better in certain situations.
Like what?
Well, for one, they tend to be more effective when you're riding in those lower support modes.
Oh, okay. Because the battery's not generating as much heat on its own.
Exactly. And they're even more helpful when the temperature really drops, like below -5 Celsius.
So like if I live in a really cold place, a cover might be worth it.
Yeah, potentially. And here's a pro tip. Pre-warm the cover inside before you put it on.
Ooh, smart.
Yeah, it'll boost its effectiveness.
So basically a cover might help, especially in extreme cold, but it's not a miracle cure.
Taking good care of your battery and having smart riding habits are still the most important things.
Got it. All right, so we've covered storage, riding tips. What about the future? Is there any hope for batteries that like aren't so affected by the cold?
You know, that Ebike 24 article did mention some interesting research on cold-resistant batteries. It seems like there's some promising stuff happening.
Ooh, this is where I get excited. Imagine like no more winter range anxiety.
Right. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Researchers are looking at ways to change the chemistry of lithium-ion batteries,
Yeah.
make them less sensitive to cold.
Okay.
And then there's all the buzz about solid-state batteries.
Solid state batteries. I've heard that term thrown around, but I don't really know what it means.
Well, they're a completely different type of battery.
Okay.
One of their big advantages is that they're way less affected by temperature.
Like both hot and cold.
Yeah.
So they're like the super batteries of the future.
They have the potential, yeah.
Cool.
Still early days for e-bikes, but there's definitely progress happening.
Sounds promising.
Yeah,
But for now, we got to focus on what we can do with our current batteries.
definitely.
So let's recap those key takeaways for.
I think so. We've given folks a good toolkit to tackle those winter woes.
Right. Let's just do a super quick recap, make sure everyone's ready for those winter adventures.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I mean, the first takeaway is, treat your battery like it's on vacation. Some warm, comfy, no sudden chills.
Exactly. Room temperature charging, a stable storage spot.
Yeah.
And no crazy temperature swings, right?
Right.
Gotta pamper that battery.
And when you are ready to ride, don't forget to warm up that battery.
Just like stretching before workout.
Exactly. Start slow. Let it come up to temperature before you really put it through its paces.
Gotcha. And if possible, avoid those short trips with the stops and starts.
A nice longer ride is much better for your battery in the cold.
Makes sense. And for our listeners who live in those seriously cold places where it gets below freezing.
You might want to think about one of those neoprene battery covers.
Yeah, like a little winter coat for your battery.
Exactly. Won't solve all your problems, but it can help slow down that cooling, especially if you're riding in a lower support mode.
Okay. So there you have it. Store it smart, ride it smart, and maybe consider a cover. But most importantly, don't let the cold keep you from enjoying your e-bike.
Totally agree. And hey, remember all that research into cold-resistant batteries? Those super batteries of the future, getting closer all the time.
That's super exciting. Which brings us to a question that Ebike 24 article brought up, and I thought it was really interesting. They're like, with everyone going electric these days, do you think these cold-resistant e-bike batteries, do you think they'll be standard soon?
That's a good question. I mean, when there's demand, technology tends to follow, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So with more and more people riding e-bikes in the winter, I think it's only a matter of time before we see some big improvements in cold weather performance.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. It'll be exciting to see what happens. But for now, we want to hear from you guys. What are your experiences with winter e-bike riding? Have you tried any of the tips we talked about?
Or maybe you have some winter wisdom of your own.
Yeah, share it with us. Head over to our website or social media, let us know. Stay warm, ride safe, and keep those batteries charged.
And happy riding.